Hello everyone, welcome back to Out of Spec Guide. My name is Max and you joined me in a crowded parking garage today in the Tyson's Corner Shopping Center, a very large mall in Northern Virginia. I'm home visiting family for the holidays and I figured I would check out this charging station to introduce those of you who are newer to electric vehicles to what exactly is going on here and the things I particularly don't like about having stations like this, which are DC fast chargers for electric cars, in parking garages for malls. So let's examine this Electrify America station, not pick on them too hard. They're one of course, the big brands that make these fast chargers. But let's talk about what's going on here, where slow charging actually makes more sense. And should you find one of these fast chargers, well, how do you activate it? What are the best practices for you as a new electric vehicle owner in terms of using it so that you can be courteous to other people? So if you are one of our EV experts here watching this, please share this with someone who may benefit from it. Anyhow, let's get into it, breaking down this charging station, which is found very close, in this case, to the entrance of the parking garage, how I found it, what's going on, and how and why you might charge your car here, the downsides of doing so, etc. All right, so if you happen to find chargers exactly like this, well, these are DC fast chargers. They are owned and operated by Electrify America. And if you're in Tyson's Corner or somewhere else where you see these, well, activating them is pretty simple. We've actually made a video on this channel I can refer you to in the info card. But to sum it up, you basically have to set up an account ahead of time. You use their app on your phone. You select a charger, like this one is charger 4 at this site, and then you would swipe to start charging. Or you could add their virtual pass to your Apple or Google Wallet on your phone, and then tap your phone here with that. I find that works well sometimes because, like in this parking garage, which is enclosed, you have poor cellular connectivity. Maybe the app doesn't work so well. And while you're charging, an etiquette thing I want to talk about, and the thing I want to really break down in this video is try not to what they call idle, because these are fast chargers, again, DC direct current fast chargers. For many cars, they theoretically could charge you up in half an hour or less. And when you're fully charged, well, you're just basically taking up that plug. The charger's still locked to your vehicle is occupying the spot, and you've turned it into a parking spot. And these are not abundant. As you can see, this is a massive parking garage for a massive, massive indoor mall, and there are only 4 of these. The reason for that being that this is very expensive, very sophisticated hardware. It's cool. I think it's really helpful on road trips, at rest stops, at off the highway. I understand it less in malls and situations like this because, well, you might be out at the mall for well over half an hour. And in that time, if your car's fully charged, you're just idling. I'd rather have a different kind of charger that we'll talk about in this video as well. But the way to avoid that is to just be considerate. Don't plug in if you're well charged at like 70 or 80% battery. There's no need to. But if you come in and your vehicle is like 10% battery and you could, of course, appreciate a charge you'd like to fill up, you can. By the way, of course, Electrify America is one of those networks that's paid. So in addition to whatever you may be paying for parking, in this situation, you're also paying to charge. That could be a cost of $20 or more. It's actually quite comparable to gas with DC fast charging. It's a pretty expensive way to charge. Again, this is very expensive equipment we're talking about. I believe this Tyson owner here, not to be too nosy, is on a free plan because they bought a new vehicle, so they get some free charging for a little bit. So we see a lot of people taking advantage of that, which is fine, but just don't leave your car idled once it's fully charged. They're at 61%, so I'm hoping they're back soon. The way to avoid having your car idle, though, is your vehicle may have an app. Porsche has an app. If you have a Tesla, it has an app, and you're using an adapter to charge. Polestar, many vehicles have an app. Check your vehicle's status. What's the battery at? If it's at 80%, if it says it's done charging, get that thing off the charger, move it to another parking space. You can also look at the Electrify America app, which has mixed reliability, I'll admit. But Electrify America, or whomever may be making the fast charger, usually will actually tell you your vehicle's battery percentage and where it's at, if it's charging or if it's not. You can enable notifications on your phone so it tells you, hey, your vehicle's fully charged, please unplug it. Electrify America is, I believe, in the process of rolling out idle fees where they'll actually charge you for just taking up one of these parking spaces, much needed. Now, let's talk a little bit about why these are, DC fast chargers, the other kind of chargers I mentioned that I think might make a lot of sense here, and numbers here, right? These chargers are theoretically up to 150 kilowatts, so they could charge your car in half an hour. At the moment, they've all been kneecapped to a third of that speed, 50 kilowatts. Kilowatts is just a unit basically of power, and kilowatt hours is a unit of energy. It's, let's say you had a car with a 150 kilowatt hour battery. If you were charging at a perfectly even 150 kilowatts for 1 hour, you would fill up that 150 kilowatt hour battery. That's how the math kind of converts there. Sorry, I gotta move. There's a BMW iX who's just pulling in. Another cool electric car. Anyhow, so yeah, these are 50 kilowatts, meaning like, let's say this Porsche, which has a probably 80-ish kilowatt hour battery, it's gonna take it a little over an hour to charge if it was dead empty, but it's not. But 50 kilowatts actually makes sense for this mall. I don't think it's intentional why they configured it. I think it's just more down to an issue with its hardware. But 50 kilowatts is the speed I would prefer. I might even more so prefer slower charging that is not what they call DC or direct current fast charging. You have another form called level 2 charging. So let me flip the camera around and tell you about that, situations where I think that makes sense and why I might like to see more of those in lieu of these, fancy glowing DC fast charging stalls. So there's DC fast charging, which is kind of the fastest form of charging, and it typically is around the speed of 50 kilowatts at minimum, like in this case where they've derated it, to 150 kilowatts as it's proudly originally been branded, or in some cases 350 or even 400 kilowatts. That's where you hear stories of vehicles being able to basically get a charge in 20 minutes, right? Eligible vehicles that actually can accept that charge speed. Well, there's a much lower common denominator among what we call level 2 charging. It's called level 2 because there's also level 1. In the US, level 1 is like plugging into a standard wall outlet. It's the slowest form of charging. Some people do this in their garage at home if they don't have the dryer outlet or the higher voltage outlet, which is what level 2 is. But level 1 is, plugging into like a normal wall outlet, 120 volts. Takes several days to charge most cars. We're talking about a charging speed of a little over 1 kilowatt, right? 1/50th of what even these slow DC fast chargers will do. Then you've got level 2. And level 2 is double the voltage, and typically we're talking about many more amps as well. So basically more power. 6 to 12 kilowatts usually. Some places, like in Europe where they have 3-phase power, level 2 charging can go up to speeds of 21 kilowatts, which, is quite nice. 21 kilowatts there, you could fill up an 80 kilowatt hour battery in 4 hours. But anyhow, I think for lots of situations, level 2 is great. Level 1 makes sense if it's the only option you've got at home. If you're at an airport, there's actually nearby here, Ronald Reagan National Airport. They have some slow chargers. They're not level 1, but I think they could be because you're parked at the airport for several days. Level 2 is what's really common. That's what I find in other parking garages, at airports, other malls. And that's where you have charging that takes typically 8 to 10 hours to fully charge. But I don't think you're fully charging here. You just want to get a little bit of juice, and that's why it makes so much sense. Those chargers also are much cheaper than DC fast chargers. We're talking like an order or two of magnitude cheaper. So instead of having 4 stalls, you could have, let's say 30 or 40 units, whether they're ChargePoint or Clipper Creek or Blink or whoever the charging provider may be. This hardware is much more common and much simpler. It's smaller, it's easier to install, and more parking spaces can have it. And as a result, you can charge more EV drivers. And those EV drivers aren't going to be idling because ideally they're going to be charging slower. It's easier on the electric grid as well. It's typically also cheaper. You'll notice this as an end consumer. At most places, not always, but typically level 2 charging is just a lot cheaper than DC fast charging. I find it's like usually a third to a quarter of the cost. It makes it much cheaper than gas. In some cases, I found it's also free because a business like, let's say, the mall or the ski resort will subsidize it. I've covered on this channel ski resorts that offer this level 2 charging. So to recap here, right, we have the level 1, very slow charging, level 2 that I'd like to see here, and DC fast charging, which some people call level 3. Technically, there is no such thing as level 3. It's a different form of charging. It's very sophisticated in terms of the hardware, the rectifiers, everything that it's needed to make it work, as well as the electrical grid hookups. And so that form of charging, I love to see on road trips and highways. I don't so much like to see in parking garages like this, where folks might spend well over half an hour. Not my favorite. Topically enough, I just showed a family how to charge their BMW iX because the Electrify America app is not the most intuitive thing in the world, and their vehicle they've just left has stopped charging. They might incur idle fees. I thought they were at full battery. According to the Electrify America screen, though, they're at 52%. They only charged 4%, and the station stopped. I'm not exactly sure how that happened. That's really unfortunate. So I'm hoping they don't get charged idle fees. I hope they come back soon enough. But yeah, Electrify America, being its usual somewhat unreliable self at times. I don't want to call them out too much, but my point in this video is DC fast charging has to be used responsibly. Your car can charge really quickly. Keep an eye on it, or it may just randomly end the charging session, as Electrify America has done here, at which point you're taking up one of only 4 spots here for a limited commodity. I would like to see more of that slower level 2 charging I talked about, because of course DC fast charging, it's not the only way to charge in public, and just because it's fast doesn't mean it's always what you want. Anyhow, I've been Max without a spec guide. Hopefully this has been sort of a helpful vlog or just showcase of a charging situation I came across in the real world. I of course own an electric car and drive one. I'm not with it at the moment because I'm traveling, but I like to make these kind of videos as an out and about. Please let me know the questions you have about electric vehicle ownership, maintenance, all of those things. We're here to cover that at Out of Spec Guide, and I'll see you in the next video. If you're watching this still in 2023, have a happy new year, and see you in the next one. Bye. Well, check that out. Tyson's Corner has a Lucid showroom, one of the vehicle partners of Electrify America. So yeah, they've got space to charge in the mall. They also have a Tesla showroom. So if you really don't have a great experience at the Electrify America in the parking garage, you can go straight ahead and I guess just buy a Tesla at Tyson's Corner. Pretty cool.